السلام عليكم دكتور ساري.
هلا وعليكم السلام.
حياك الله دكتور، أهلا وسهلا. دكتور أنا I signed you as a host if you would like to share your screen.
Okay. Okay, I think we should go ahead and start.
Yes doctor, we have more than 100 students so we can start.
Let me just get Okay, can everybody see the screen? Is it clear?
Yes doctor, we can see actually the folder but not the slide.
That's weird. What about now?
Still doctor, we only can see the folder with the lectures titles.
It's a problem. Here we go. No. Still folder?
Now we see the folder and the cursor is on week 6.
I'm not sure what's going on. I need to close this, I guess.
Let me try to share doctor, then we can try from your side.
Just a second.
Okay.
Try it. What about now? Yes.
No, doctor, not yet.
And I'm looking at the screen at the presentation, and it says I'm sharing. Is everybody having the same problem?
Students, can you see this?
No, we don't see the screen.
Okay. What do you see now? What do you see now?
We see the folder, doctor, and the cursor moving.
Now?
Not yet, still the folder, doctor.
Well, I'm clicking on it, and I see it. I don't know why it's not registering.
Doctor, I think when you share your screen, select share all and not only a specific folder. That way it should work.
Okay, now?
Yeah, now it works.
Yeah,
Okay,
it works.
thanks for the
Thank you.
suggestion. Okay. Okay, Bismillah. How are you guys doing? I hope you had a good week. It's weekend time. We're going to wrap up the week. Today's lecture is a very important lecture. I actually wanted to come and meet you all and give you this in person. Unfortunately, Dr. Amr tells me there's no venue to have the meeting. I even thought about getting another lecture delivered today. Like, unfortunately, Dr. Raed is in Malaysia. He's involved in a workshop of sorts. So we're going to go ahead with this. Now, as I say that, understand that today's lecture is very important for a variety of reasons. First of all, as a concept, I think strategy in general, for life, for business, for healthcare, is a very important concept to understand, and there's a science behind it, and it's very nice, I think, and useful to understand how the science works. At the least, it's an organizational tool for running a business or for applying in healthcare. Even sometimes on more personal endeavors. The second is that some of you will be given a strategy project to work on. So understanding today's lecture for those groups, possibly eight of the 30 groups or 10 of the 30 groups, and almost 1/3, it'd be very important to understand the lecture and to be able to apply the lecture, and so parts of it will be hands-on. It may seem like a confusing concept, but the intent of the lecture is to really simplify it to an applied method. Okay, if there's any questions, you should ask. When we start distributing your projects, for those of you who have strategy, you might want to come back and discuss some issues that you may have had difficulty understanding today, or that you need clarified further. So that being said, what is strategy? For you guys, what is strategy? I need participation.
Doctor, strategy is an organized plan to reach a certain aim.
That's excellent. Straight to the point. Any other answers? Any other answers? What is strategy?
Their management directional decisions towards a certain mission or a vision.
Okay, that's more technical. Also very good. Where does it come from? What is the word? Where is it borrowed from? Strategic, stratego. Where does it come from? What industry?
Is it of Latin origin? Strat meaning plan?
Yeah, I think it's from Latin origin, but no, but where does it come from? What industry does it come from?
Business.
No, it's borrowed into business. Yeah. What did you say?
Military.
Military. It comes from warfare. All right. So today we're going to answer what is strategy. I will take a side step into what organizational structure and accountability means, because you also have to understand in an organization who ultimately is responsible for the strategy and coming up with the strategy and how it works within an organization. So we'll take a side step out of strategy into that, and then we'll come back and talk about how to formulate a strategy and give some examples in healthcare, and then why a lot of strategies end up failing, because a lot of strategies end up failing. Even though putting a successful strategy together is not difficult, but making it successful, making it work. So we'll talk about that. So yes, it comes from the military. And around your answers, there's many definitions. All your answers are correct. One definition is that it is applying means to fulfill the ends. It's means to an end, right? It's how you put your. So what does that mean? Means to fulfill the ends. What's the means? What's the means in business? And what's the ends?
Values.
Hanuf, what's the means and what's the ends? Yes? Ends are the goals. No. Yeah, ends are what somebody said it, like the vision, or even the mission, right? Those are the ends. Those are our final objective. Values are how we apply those means. And we will talk about that. But ends are the mission and the vision, right? That's where we're ending up. And means are our resources. What resources do we have on the table? What human resource, what technology resource, what assets we have? How can we apply them in such a way to fulfill the ends, to reach the goals, right? So another definition by Steiner is the top management's directional decision towards mission and vision. Mintzberg is a big name in business and strategy academically, and he talks about four P's. The strategy is perspective, plan, pattern, and position. And position is really important, because when we talk about positioning yourself or giving yourself a niche as any entity, then that really becomes the heart of strategy. And then of course there's Porter, Michael Porter, one of the biggest names in business and the fathers of modern business, an HBR professor. So he says strategy is all about being different. It's choosing a unique set of activities. It's the uniqueness and the unique customer mix, and the unique mix of customer values that makes you strategic and that makes you different. So it's about differentiation. It's about positioning yourself differently. And in essence, he says strategy is choosing what not to do. Everybody's doing the basic stuff. Strategy is what you're doing different to make you stand out. This is an example of a strategy from a hospital from a system in Minnesota. This is an example of a healthcare strategy, right, from a healthcare system in Minnesota. And it looks very busy and looks very confusing, but that's exactly how the strategy looks like, right? And it makes a lot of sense. When we break it down, you'll make a lot of sense, and we will break it down towards the end to show you how something like this comes about and how it will come into actual practice. To be a valuable tool in managing strategically your organization. We're going to jump off to a short little video. So we can do. Yes. There's that here. Yes. I'll jump off to a short little video for you guys to watch for a few minutes.
Doctor, we can't hear any audio.
I'm sorry? You don't have audio?
Yeah, no audio.
No audio. All right. How do we share the audio? Let's see. We did this the last time. How do we share the audio?
Doctor, so there are 3 dots,
Yes.
drop down menu, and then there's share computer sound.
All right. Let's try now.
A global strategy.
Yes, it
Is that
works.
working?
Yeah, it works.
All right. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just take a step back.
It seems only natural to start with a discussion of what strategy is and what it isn't. First, consider the following strategy statements drawn from actual documents and announcements from well-respected companies. Our strategy is to be the low-cost provider. We are pursuing a global strategy. The company's strategy is to integrate a set of regional acquisitions. Our strategy is to provide unrivaled customer service. Our strategic intent is to always be the first mover. Our strategy is to move from defense to industrial applications. What do these strategy statements all have in common? Well, first of all, none of them are actually strategies. They represent tactics, goals, objectives, and descriptions, but not strategies. They are mere strategic threads, small components of overall strategies. The problem is that in recent years, strategy has become something of a buzzword. Whenever we want to sound smart and demonstrate our business acumen, we just make sure the word strategy shows up in our ideas. The result is that we now refer to many mundane and uninteresting aspects of the business as being strategic, when they are really only small pieces of the overall business strategy. So then, what is a strategy? Being clear about what a strategy is will help us understand more clearly what a strategy is not. Well, the word strategy originally comes from the Greek word strategos, meaning the art of the general. In other words, the origin of strategy comes from the art of war, and specifically the role of the general in a war. In fact, there's a famous treatise entitled The Art of War that is said to have been authored by Sun Tzu, a legendary Chinese general, around the 2nd century BC. Strategists consider The Art of War to be one of the great masterpieces on strategy. In the art of war, the goal is to win. Winning is good and losing is very, very bad. Can you imagine the great Hannibal saying something like, "Our strategy is to beat Rome"? No, Hannibal's goal was to defeat Rome. His strategy was to bring hidden strengths against the weaknesses of his enemy at the point of attack to achieve that goal, such as crossing the Alps when the enemies did not believe he could. The general is responsible for multiple units that must work together to win the battle and the war. The way the general adds value to the battle is by providing high-level orchestration and vision. That is, he can see what the field commanders cannot. Great generals think about the whole, and they work to coordinate all the necessary pieces, even sacrificing some pieces when necessary in order to ensure that the overall goal is achieved. We sometimes think of business as modern-day war, but the casualties are more frequently investor pocketbooks rather than human lives. The challenge of the executive is similar to the challenge of the ancient general. The modern-day executive needs to develop a set of complex tactics and activities that lead to a victory. So, how do we know what our strategy is? Or, if we do not have a strategy, how do we formulate one? A good strategy provides clear and concise answers to 4 key questions. First, where do we compete? In other words, what competitive arenas or markets will we be active in? We define markets as industries, product markets within those industries, and geographic markets. Second, what unique value do we bring to win in those markets? In other words, why do our customers choose our products and services when they could have chosen the products and services of any competitor out there? Our unique value could be cost or differentiation, which includes image, customization, styling, reliability, etc. Third, What resources and capabilities do we utilize to deliver that value? Do we have exceptional human capital, superior technology, unrivaled network connections, or a unique reputation? Resources generally refer to the things we have in our toolbox. These things can be tangible, such as a diamond mine or an oil field, or they can be intangible, such as a reputation. Capabilities generally refer to the things that we can do, or our ability to use the things in our toolbox. Fourth, how do we sustain our ability to provide that unique value? Are there barriers to imitation? Are there factors that keep our competitors from being willing or able to replicate the value we create for our customers? This last question focuses on understanding what factors allow us to continue to win over time. So one example of a clearly defined strategy comes from IKEA. IKEA sells relatively inexpensive, contemporary Scandinavian-style furniture and home furnishings to primarily young white-collar customers all over the world. By being the first furniture retailer to put stores in every major country, IKEA has greater scale than local competitors. The choice of markets has helped IKEA offer their unique value propositions of inexpensive, fashionable furniture. IKEA sells this furniture in a fun and low-pressure showroom where order fulfillment is usually immediate. IKEA is able to sell inexpensive, stylish furniture because they've developed excellent design capabilities for inexpensive Scandinavian design. But perhaps even more important is the fact that products are designed to be manufactured by suppliers using mass production techniques and then shipped in flat boxes. The flat boxes require that final assembly is done by the final customer, but this dramatically drops shipping costs. Because shipping costs are so low, IKEA's suppliers can manufacture furniture in high volumes and ship it around the globe. The complex interdependence of IKEA's strategy makes it difficult for competitors to imitate because they don't design their own furniture and their suppliers don't manufacture furniture in high volumes and ship in flat boxes. To imitate IKEA, they would have to completely change the way they design, manufacture, and ship their furniture. Note that we learn what IKEA does, but we also learned what IKEA does not do. IKEA does not compete in the high-end furniture business. IKEA does not try to provide high levels of service or customization to customers. IKEA designs most of its furniture, but does not try to manufacture its products. Thus, in addition to clearly articulating why we win with customers, a really good strategy also provides a clear boundary line signaling what we do not do. It is also important to note that what we have discussed briefly over the last few minutes is not in any way intended to be comprehensive, and there are many important perspectives that are excluded. For example, Henry Mintzberg, one of the most well-respected business strategists of our day, would want to emphasize the important differences between an intended strategy, an emergent strategy, and a realized strategy. He would want you to know that sometimes strategy is really more about what you actually do rather than what you intend to do. That is, your real strategy emerges as you do it and may not line up with your plans. Other strategists would not want me to leave out the importance of staging or timing. You may have a great plan, but if you execute the plan with poor timing, it may fall flat. To be successful, you also need to have a well-orchestrated set of timed steps in order to win in the marketplace. In conclusion, since we cannot adequately cover every expert's opinion in just a few minutes, I really want to focus your attention on the 4 questions we discussed before. As you strategically analyze companies and/or develop your own strategies, you need to have compelling answers to these 4 questions. First, where do we compete? Second, what unique value do we bring to the table in those markets? Third, what resources and capabilities do we utilize to deliver that value? And fourth, how do we sustain our ability to provide that unique value? When you have these answers, you will be well on your way to articulating a clear strategy.
Okay, is everybody on board?
Yes.
Is everybody on board? I need to pause for a few seconds. Just stay with me, please. Okay. So moving on, I'd like to show the video as an introduction to the concept, and we're going to cover some of the same concepts as we move on. Any questions so far? Any questions?
No, the video is very clear.
Excellent. Right. So what is accountability? I said we're going to shift out of strategy. We're going to shift into some organizational stuff, and then we're going to go back into strategy. But I want to first go about as to what is accountability, because as we talk about the organizational stuff, we need to know who to hold accountable for what. Okay. So what does accountability mean?
Isn't it like a synonym for responsibility?
Is like a
Like
synonym
being
for responsibility.
It's like the person held accountable is the one held responsible in case anything goes wrong in the plan or the strategy.
Excellent. And to hold somebody responsible for something, what must you first make sure is done? What must you first do to hold somebody responsible or accountable?
You need to assert the roles of responsibility and accountability between the team members.
You need to designate the roles. Okay.
Yeah.
So you tell them what you expect them to do. What else?
Yeah.
What else? So you designate the roles, but what else? Along the designation, what you must ensure is done, because sometimes we designate roles, but something's missing.
Like you must make sure that the person being held accountable is the one that was actually in charge of the project, not like a scapegoat or something.
Excellent.
And the outcome should be clear.
So you must give them control, right? The accountability equation means that responsibility must equal control, and control must equal responsibility. Well, this is something that, to be honest, is lacking in a big way from, I'm not going to say culturally, but in businesses in general, and healthcare is no exception, is sometimes lacking in a big way. Which, how does it translate to real life? A lot of people have a lot of control, but somehow, as one of you cleverly said, they find a way out of being responsible by making the scapegoat responsible for whatever it is, and they get out of the responsibility. So they are given the control, they're given the authority, but they found a way to weasel out of being responsible. And a lot of people, those scapegoats, can be held responsible, for whatever they're held responsible for, without actually giving them authority or power. And does that work? If you're held responsible for something that you have no power over or no control over, it doesn't work. And if you have a lot of control, but you're not responsible, it doesn't work. Yes?
It's unfair, but it happens. Yeah, I think
it happens, of course. Of course, it happens all the time, and it's unfair, and life isn't fair, and that's accepted. But we're talking about, when we talk about accountability, responsibility, we're talking about productivity, performance. If we want to run a business the right way, we must ensure that the people are held accountable by empowering the right people for the right role and expecting from them to deliver whatever they're responsible for. Okay, that is the accountability equation. Control must equal responsibility. If control does not equal responsibility, you don't really have the right balance, and Batali, your performance is going to suffer. Okay, and that is true on all on the whole spectrum of institutes, whether they're for-profit, pure business, pure private, whether they're governmental, non-for-profit. The same equation stands, right? And there are levels. There are levels of accountability. So we must hold accountable the right person at the right level. What is the highest level? What is the highest level in an institution that, to your knowledge, do you know? What is the highest level in terms of in terms of accountability? What is the highest level?
The management director, or like the CEO of the hospital.
So the management or the CEO, so the executive director. Okay, is there anything higher than that? Is there somebody higher than the CEO?
maybe in regards to the ministry levels, and you'll include the whole ministry, maybe the Minister of Health.
So you could say the minister is a kind of a CEO for the Ministry of Health, and then he returns to what, or he returns to who?
To the king.
The board of ministers, right? مجلس الوزراء. Ministers يرجعوا لمجلس الوزراء ورئيس مجلس الوزراء, right? The director or the whether it's a presidency of the person responsible for the whole cabinet, صح? رئيس مجلس الوزراء. But that's on the ministerial level, and all that. Whether we're talking ministries or we're talking a CEO, the highest level is called the level of governance. Tamam, and we'll talk about who's in charge of governance. After that comes leadership, as you correctly said, the executives. Then comes management, which is a lower level, it's an operational level, and then comes delivery, which are actually people who are doing the job to deliver the service or the product, right? So the board of directors in a private entity, they will, or in a government entity, in a government entity, they call them the board of trustees, right? Because they're entrusted with the governance of whatever entity, organization that is, or the board of directors, they're entrusted with the money or the money of the investors. They provide something called governance, al-hawkama, governance. That is at that high level. What basically ministers do in the cabinet of ministers is they provide governance, overall direction, right? The highest level, the king or the they give direction, and the ministers provide governance within that cabinet as to what are the policies that are going to regulate the country. So that is governance. The board of directors looks at those policies and makes sure the entity follows those policies, does not break any laws, does not break any regulations, does not perform unethically, is not pushing, the leadership is not pushing the entity into liability, governance. The next level is the executives, headed by the chief executive officer. That's the level of leadership. In a hospital, you would have somebody like the chief executive officer, and then you have people who are the CMO, the chief medical, chief operational, the chief information, a bunch of other C-level or executive level leaders. And then on a managerial level, you have, in a hospital, you might call them the chairman or the director of a department or unit or division, whatever it is. Those are all managerial levels. And then the actual people, the doctors and the nurses and the technicians and the receptionists and the cleaners, those are people at the delivery level, which constitute the majority of the workforce within any institute. So 4 levels, okay? 4 levels, and they deliver 4 different, there's 4 different levels of accountability. You said governance is the board of directors, leadership by the chief executives, and the executives management is by the chairman, and delivery is by the frontliners. What does governance mean? This is the part that I want to comment. What is the meaning of the word governance? What does that entail? What does that entail to you guys? I need the contribution.
Someone answered control in the chat.
Control. No, control. خلاص احنا control معناها authority, صح? Control is another word for authority. Governance is the overarching authority. But what does it entail? What does this overarching authority entail? Is strategy part of governance? Yes or no?
Yes.
Strategy is part of governance. Okay. What else is part of governance?
Is it the distribution of accountability and responsibility?
Is that the board, the job of the board? What do you think the board does? What do you think المثال حق ministers, even though it doesn't really apply here, but what do you think they do in terms of governance?
Reviewing.
All right, so we mentioned this a little. So we said governance, or the board, is the overarching authority. So it is the body of people headed by a head of the board that ensure that the institute is following rules and is following regulations and is following their strategy and is applying correctly their strategy. And they are actually in charge of approving whatever strategy that the next level comes up with, right? So they are the overarching authority. They want to make sure that things are done right and taking this institute in the right place without breaking any rules, regulations, without violating policies in the country. Tamam, that's governance. Al-Hawkama, that's what Hawkama means. It provides the overarching cover, those decisions at a very high level as to what can and cannot be done. The next level comes leadership. What does leadership, if this is a very simple slide, but I put two out of the many, but almost the two most important, and probably the two that cover the full scope of leadership, the CEO and the executives. What do you think the two things under leadership that I put down here are? What does leadership do? What does leadership come up with? Leadership. What is leadership?
Is it like leader? We said it's the person, like the person held accountable is the leader. He's in charge of making sure these rules and regulations are followed.
Making
leadership,
decisions.
The CEO is leadership, right? Of course they make decisions. The CEO, the chief medical, the chief, those are leaders. They're executive leaders. But what are they mainly in charge of? Are they mainly in charge of attendance? الناس تحضر في وقتها? People come to work on time? Are they in charge of, what are they in charge of? Is that what they do?
Resource
Make
management.
sure everybody's there on time? Resource management, that's part of it, but that's part of a bigger scheme, of a bigger term. What are we talking about today?
Strategies.
We'll talk about strategy, leaders, and that's why I had to go out, because I need you to understand that under the umbrella of governance, under the overarching authority of governance, the leaders, the executives, mainly the CEO, must come up with a strategy. They, of course, get it approved by the board of directors or the governance, but they are in charge of coming up with the strategy. They are in charge of, so when we talked about resource management, that ultimately will become part of the strategy, because the executives know what kind of resources they have, and they know how they're going to align those resources to provide direction. So the CEO comes up with a strategy. The second thing that the CEOs are highly in charge of is culture. Yani, what is the meaning of culture? What is the actual meaning of culture in business? Culture. What do you think culture means? إيش culture بالعربي for the Arab speakers?
ثقافة.
ثقافة, excellent. What does that mean in business, culture? One of you mentioned the word that has a lot to do with culture.
عرف.
Yeah, culture is ثقافة, عرف, صح. عرف is more societal, but values. So one of you mentioned values. القيم, the values that people have within an industry. So how is leadership in charge of culture? اليوم, if the CEO makes it very important that everybody in the industry comes from a place where the customer experience is the most important, and if somebody comes into the hospital, for example, and they're lost, and the oncologist who may have a very busy schedule happens to pass by and notices a lost person and kind of says, hey, can I help you? And they direct them in the right direction, establishing that value for the delivery line is what setting a culture or creating a culture means for leadership and for the CEO, because they've made it clear that the customer experience is very important, and that people will get hired because they provide a high or a good customer experience, and people will get fired because they don't provide a good customer experience. So they create that culture of people who share those values within that strategy and serve that strategy. That is, those two for me are primarily the most important part of the CEO's job: setting the strategy and creating the culture. That helps the strategy come into fruition. And this is why I went aside. Yes.
Sorry, I have a question. Is it that where the term corporate culture comes from?
Is that what corporate culture?
Yeah, no, there's like a term that I often hear, corporate culture. Is that where it comes from? Like,
of course, when you talk about the term corporate culture means that that is the body, or that is the part of the organization that is going to be managing ثقافة الناس. يعني مثلا Dr. Ra'id will be talking to you about change, right? So اليوم طبعا there's all of these little هيئات ووزارات positions even within the ministries, within the VROs, within the hospitals. Like there's a change management division, there's a corporate culture division, there's an executive for corporate culture, there's an executive for patient for experience. Yes, they all serve, because frequently strategies transcend, or خلينا نقول strategies not even transcend, descend into becoming operational tools. So people manage numbers, and they manage a strategy goes from being a high level map as to what you really want to provide into a low level operational map where people are kind of punching numbers. And for the strategy to really reach fruition, you need to manage the culture. So that post or that division or that department has been created to make sure the culture is being managed in such a way that aligns with the strategy and allows it to provide results. فهمتي ليش there's such positions now?
yes, thank you so much.
All right. And the next level, as we said, is management. We talk about, chairman, division heads, things like that. These are the people that are in charge of execution and operations. These are the people that need to be held accountable for executions and operations, making sure that the process is being followed, that results are being provided on a low level. And when we talk about accountability, we must make sure that every one of these levels is accountable for their part. So if there's failure in the overarching authority or following rules and regulations, then at the level of the board, they will be held accountable. If the strategy is not set right or put into action, or the culture was not managed, then CEO will be held accountable. If there's a problem with operations or execution, and there's failure to follow up, then the managers will be held accountable. Tamam? And Dr. Ra'id will talk a lot about this. What is the difference between management and leadership? And it is important. And it's not that leaders are more important than managers. We usually have fewer leaders than we do managers. But it's the understanding that looking into the future and change management and having ideas and taking risks, and having those are the kind of things that leaders need to be doing, and for that they need to have a high level of emotional intelligence. Whereas with managers, there are people that are more bossy, if you want. There are people that follow rules or ensure that rules are being followed. So it's all about procedure and control and execution. So they may be a little bit less personal, but they're more about getting results. And these two have to work hand in hand to get results for the whole institution. Tamam? I just wanted to clarify that so that when we talk about strategy, we understand where we're coming from. Well, typically in the real world, for you to understand, typically in the real world, a lot of business and now a lot of health institutions and organizations, they have something called a strategic retreat. Retreat is also a warfare term, and they like to call it a strategic retreat. What does that mean? It means that they choose a place, usually a nice place, and the executive leadership goes out to that place for a 2-3 day camp, right? And then they have people helping them out with the strategy. And then what those executives do is they review their assets, they review their resources, they review what they have at hand, and they also review their direction, their mission and vision, right? And then they start plotting a strategy. They start formulating a strategy in the strategic retreat to be followed for the next year or 2 or 5, whatever. But they do it on a yearly basis to revisit, because part of the strategy is also to redirect, make sure that you're going in the right direction. So that's what really happens in real life nowadays. They formulate strategies and they follow strategies. For the purpose of this lecture, we will yes.
I'm sorry, this is between the leaders and the managers?
Mainly the executives, the C-suite. The C-suite or the executive suite, the top leaders, because the top leaders, the managers report to them. So they have those management reports. You're talking about a handful of people. They might bring the managers along if they need to go into operational stuff, but the decision happens at the level of the CEO to approve the strategy that's formulated with his executive team. And then they present it to the board, and the board says, yes, go ahead. And then they start executing. The managers start executing. So no, this is again, strategy is one of the jobs of the highest level of leadership in the place, the CEO himself and his executives, his chosen generals, if you want. So this is what they do. They formulate a strategy. To formulate a strategy and to really simplify even more than the video that was presented, we're going to talk about steps. And those steps, so for those of you who will be assigned a strategy document, you need to pay attention right now, because these are the steps that you will have to address in your paper about formulating a strategy. So these are the steps. First, determine the organizational identity, al-hawiyya. Then do an external market analysis, as was viewed in the video. Define your customer values and what are your unique values that you're going to be hitting, and then do an internal analysis for your resources and your capabilities and align them in such a way, and then finally execution and sustainability so that you can keep on going on. Those are the 5 steps. Those are the 5 steps that any strategy will have to address. بالنسبة للproject, you don't have to worry about the 5th step, but in the project, I want to see an exercise about determining the identity and doing the external analysis, finding your customer values, and then doing the internal analysis of resources and resource alignment in such a way that formulates a strategy. Tamam? Any questions? This is very important. We're going to break it down. We're going to give you more examples to see how it's done in real life in a simple way. What is the organization's identity? Well, it's basically those 3 questions: the mission, vision, and values. The mission is who we are, is who the organization is why is the organization there. So it's a very general, once in a lifetime statement. We are a hospital that is delivering top care in oncology. We are a hospital that is a secondary hospital that is interested in academia and education. The mission is assassin. Why was this place built? Why was this organization pulled together? We are FedEx, an international courier that deliver paper packages and goods from country to country. Who are we? What do we do? Why were we built? And then we come to vision. Vision is more directly related to strategy, because it talks about what is our goal. And هنا في حاجة, if you've ever heard of SMART goals, SMART, I forget what it stands for, but SMART goals are basically goals that are time-bound, they're measurable, they're achievable, and they are sustainable, but they are significant. Tamam. So vision talks about, we want to be the best hospital in terms of the private sector within 3 years in achieving revenues and treating the largest number of patients. So there's a top goal, there's a top objective, a top indicator that we strive to achieve. Tamam? And usually goals are set high because people are trying to achieve something that is otherwise must be difficult and challenging to achieve. And then there's the values, al-qiyam. How do we conduct ourselves? How does the staff, if somebody says in a private sector that they want to achieve, top revenues, they want to be one of the 3 top companies in the country that, delivers, let's say, a drinkable product. What are the values? Are we going to be cheating people? Are we going to be, falsifying our results? Are we going to be putting poisons in the drinks? What values are we going to be conducting ourselves as a team while we are setting out to achieve that goal? And what kind of people need to be working in that place? That is the organization's identity. That is a very important and maybe the first part of any strategy is understanding who we are, what we stand for, and where we are heading. Tamam? That is the first question that you must answer very clearly in order to move on, is your identity. What do you stand for? The second is the market analysis. Market analysis is 2 very important steps. There's different tools for every one of those steps, but we're going to look at them very quickly. The first is the market opportunity or market share, and the second is the competitor. Any questions on identity so far?
Doctor,
Yeah, please go ahead.
So the mission is the main goal, and then the rest are the kind of the strategies or the sub goals.
The mission is the reason for existence, the purpose. Why did you build مثلا, let's say somebody started a bakery, makhbaz. What is the mission of the makhbaz? Is to this particular bakery, for example, is a gourmet bakery that deals with Italian niche breads or patisseries. So their mission is basically to deliver high-end niche Italian patisseries, goods, baked goods. Tamam? But their vision might be, because there are other Italian bakeries in the same city, their vision might be to be the leading Italian bakery in Riyadh, in the north of Riyadh, who basically attract their market share, which is a specific type of customer, and they want to lead on quality and revenues. So you see what's the difference? And they want to do that within a year or 2, and that is why they're formulating a strategy to achieve that target. That is a vision, and their values might be that they treat people with integrity, and that they're honest and they're friendly and they're creative. Those might be the values for the people that work in that bakery. That's kind of how identity works. Have you been to hospitals where in some hospitals people are generally friendly, and then other hospitals people are ignorant and nobody's paying attention, nobody really cares? Is that distinction present today in healthcare between some hospitals and others?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
There's a distinction, because some hospitals decide, no, we're going to be friendly to patients. We want patients to have a good experience. We don't want them to feel cast down. We don't want them to feel more depressed by how people treat them more than they are with their disease. So some hospitals, their CEOs decide that no, it's very important to provide a good patient experience, and that creates a culture where people. So that becomes the identity. This is a hospital that puts value on treating people with respect. So you find in the culture there in that hospital, everybody, not just the doctors, not just the nurses, everybody pays more attention to delivering care in such a way. Whereas in other hospitals, it's a job. You punch in at 8 in the morning, you punch out at 4 p.m. and what happens in the middle, who knows, who cares? So that is part of the identity of that hospital and people who work within that hospital. That is identity, both all three: mission, vision, and values. Tamam? Okay, so moving on. I'm gonna have to do something because I think I may have a little trouble. Excuse me. Okay, we're going back. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, doctor. We
Yeah, we can hear you, doctor.
So once we've clarified our identity, we're moving on to the market analysis, the external analysis. We're looking into what is the entity in the market that we're looking at the most, you think? What in the market are we looking for? Or looking at or trying to understand? What does the market mean? What is the single entity that creates a market? And 1 + 1 + 1, you end up having like thousands or millions. What is the single entity that creates your market? Anyone? Can anybody guess?
Customers.
Excellent. Who said that?
Irtiza.
That is excellent. So your customers, your clients, they are the single. So understanding what market share, what market opportunity is, you must first understand what kind of customers you tailor to, what your product or your service is going to serve who, and what is the mindset of those customers, and what is the size of that market of customers, and what is the capability of that market of customers. For example, and I don't mean anything, but let us make a presumption, and the people who live in the north are wealthier than people who live in the south for whatever reason in any city. Tamam? So if your product or your service is being delivered to people in the north, then you could expect a higher, not necessarily a higher revenue, but let's say a higher cost. You can charge them higher because their ability to pay is better. Whereas in the south, you might expect that they're going to pay less. But also, you might say, well, I have more people buying the product in the south, so that your overall volume of sales is going to be higher in the south. That is what market analysis is about. It's about understanding your customers. What is their capability? What is their interest? What are they looking for? What are they interested in? Are these people that are interested in basic stuff at a cheaper price, or are they interested in more sophisticated product at a more expensive price? And where are they located? And how can we get to them? And how can we make them our customers? That is understanding your customer, market opportunity, and market share. And what are the values? And this is the most important. This is the next step, the third step. But you start getting into that. What are the values that they're looking for? Not in terms of PM values, in terms of qima. And we'll explain the difference. Qima means that what are the kind of things that they put value on? They feel this is valuable. Tamam? Because those two words, values and value, come a lot about when we talk about strategy, because values is kind of thaqafat al-makan, the culture, and then value is what people are looking for, what customers are looking for. And as you look at that market, you need to understand who's competing with you, who's selling the same product, who's giving the same service, maybe with better quality, maybe with better service, maybe at a lesser cost. Who's competing with you, and how are they competing with you, so that you stand out and differentiate yourself? So those are the two things that when you're formulating a strategy, you must look at with regards to the external market analysis. Who's your customer, and where is that market, and how much market share can you get, and who's your competitor, because they're getting the other shares. The ones that you're not coming to you are going to your competitor. Tamam? And then it comes to this. This is a very simple, almost too simple equation, right? Value that I just explained, not the values, al-qiyam, value is either something of a better quality, whether it's the quality of the product or the quality of the service, something of a better quality or a lesser cost. Meaning, today, one of you guys might go out to buy a phone. Tamam? The most, if not the majority, if not all of you, will be able probably to buy a smartphone that maybe costs 5,000-6,000 riyals because it's top quality, because it has a lot of specs, and you can download applications, and you need extra memory and extra. You need 3 cameras instead of 2 on the phone, right? So a lot of you find value in having all these additional specs. That's high quality. And they don't care about the cost. Even if the cost is elevated, they'll pay it. But somebody might think, I don't need all these specs and applications. I want to buy a phone that enables me to make phone calls and send SMS. And for them, the value is that, I can find a phone to do such a thing for 100 riyals. I don't have to pay 5,000 or 6,000 riyals. So that's value for that person, for what they need. Tamam? Both products have created value, right? One by being a lesser cost, the other one by being higher quality. So that is pretty much customer value equation comes along those lines. And there's a very good paper that I'll be sharing with you by these two, Tracy and Wurzema, that talk about the 3 value disciplines. And this is just a very general guideline, but it creates a very good understanding of what people really look for. What can we focus on when we talk strategically? Usually it's within these 3 areas: operational excellence. What is an example of operational excellence that was mentioned today? An industry that or an organization that leads its industry in terms of price and convenience. What was an example that was given today that they have great operational excellence? I feel I'm talking to myself. I need contribution. Excellent. Yes, Amazon definitely is an example of operational excellence. A lot of the applications basically cut the costs and create a lot of convenience, but IKEA is what was mentioned today. That is the prime example of operational excellence, IKEA. Tamam? So you got that right. Whereas within customer intimacy is where the individual customer feels that they're engaged directly themselves. And so the service provider gets this lifelong loyalty from that customer and lifelong profitability from that customer by paying attention to his needs. An example in general will be tailors method. You don't buy a jacket from a department store. You go to a tailor and they create the right jacket for your size. So that is, people who go to that tailor, people go, it's a lifelong commitment. They like their tailor and they keep on going. In the industry, it's things like, I would say, Faradan, if Rolls-Royce or Bentley had a butler service and you become part of the Bentley group or the Rolls-Royce group, then it's all about customer intimacy. The car, basically you can tell them, I want such and such specs in my car, and you're going to pay a lot of money to buy that car, but you're going to build it around your own specs, and you're going to have somebody who communicates with you directly until the car is built and delivered. And then after that, whenever you need to do maintenance on the car, somebody's taking care of that. They're looking for customer intimacy. It's making you feel that you're very special. And then we have product leadership, people who lead in quality because they use technology, they use state-of-the-art stuff, they give state-of-the-art services, and they sell it to the masses, just like Apple, just like if you want the iPhone, if somebody considers that the top notch, just like the BMW in terms of vehicles, you would say that it's a top-notch engine. So they're not necessarily the most luxurious, but they have enough luxury but enough performance that they really lead in terms of the auto industry. Tamam? So those are the three value disciplines. The same can be applied to healthcare. You talk about operational excellence, you're talking about making sure that the operation doesn't cost too much and is done efficiently. We'll talk about the difference between efficiency and effectiveness at some point. If you talk about customer intimacy, we're talking about an aspect of healthcare, which is managing the customer, managing the patient in terms of their experience. We've talked about product leadership, making sure that we use top technologies, top quality surgeries are done to the top of the training of the individuals who perform them, and medicine is practiced at top level. So those are the things that might govern how medicine is being delivered as well. Is that clear for number 3, which is the customer value or the customer value disciplines? Is that clear? And those 3 areas, and there's a paper, and it's a good read. It's a nice read to read for any industry, but also in healthcare. Is any questions on number 3? Because we're going to move on to the last bit. Okay, and the last bit is the internal analysis. The internal analysis is where you understand what are your means. How much money do I have? This money, what kind of building can it insure? What kind of technology can I buy? What kind of employees can I hire? Right? So those resources, the financial, the material, the human, the technology, those are your resources. You have to figure out, what are you capable of doing? You want to open a business. How much money do I have to open the business? How much money am I going to be able to raise? And for what purpose? I'm going to choose location for the land. I'm going to choose a certain building style that is in congruence with what I'm trying to deliver in terms of service or product. What kind of people am I going to hire? Those are your resources, right? And alignment is the part of strategy that says, well, how are you going to tie those resources together to deliver the service or the product that you are selling or that you are giving? That is alignment. And we'll show you in the next slide how it works. This is how strategy works on a deep level of thinking. So we start here at the customer perspective, and we try to understand. We did our market analysis. We identified that single unit, the customer, right? We identified that single unit, and now we want to know, what is the customer looking for? Price, quality, time, functionality, partnership. They want image. They're looking for a certain brand. What is the customer perspective? Once we understand what the customer wants, what's his value proposition? What is valuable for our customer? We go to something called learning and growth, which is our internal analysis of resources. And we look at the human capital, our human resource, our information resource, our organizational capital in terms of money and assets. What do we have? What are our means? Tamam? And so that is your internal resource. And we start aligning that internal resource into this internal process. Tamam? We start looking at operational. How do we manage our operations and our customers and the innovations and the regulatory stuff and the social? How do we put it all together to deliver to our customer their value proposition? And if we're successful in a business, that means we're going to have financial growth. We're going to have productivity. We're going to have revenue. We're going to have long-term shareholder value. So this is strategy in its simplest form. Again, we have to understand our customer and what's their value proposition. That's based on the external market analysis. Based on the internal market analysis, we understand what resources do we have. If we are successful in putting those resources together in an internal process that delivers to our customer, we will be successful in providing financial sustainability, which means long-term shareholder value, growth, revenues, productivity, etc. Simply speaking, this is what strategy is all about. It's a cause and effect relationship. One thing leads to the next. And with that, we're going to wrap up. So execution is about making sure that you have objectives and measurable goals in every area and that this is, as we mentioned, strategy is being done at the top level of leadership. So you have to cascade it down like a waterfall. You have to make sure you communicate it to your managers. Managers have to make sure they communicate it to their subordinates at the delivery level, because only then can the strategy be executable. Tamam? Strategies look like something like this. On the left side, you have those 4 perspectives: the financial, the customer, the client, the internal process, and learning and growth, which is another word for your resources, right? And then you build it up in such a way that provides financial growth when you're for profit. In healthcare, you'll find sometimes that it's upside down, that the finance comes at the low level, because a lot of healthcare is non-for-profit. So finance becomes part of your learning growth or part of your asset, right? But you have your mission and vision at the very top, because that's where you're heading. You have your values at the very bottom, because that's what is going to, you're going to navigate within those values. And then you start looking at your customer perspective, and then understand financially where you stand, and how that is going to be effectively buying resources or paid towards your people, in terms of their training and your technology and your assets. And finally, how the internal process will allow you to deliver excellence in the areas, for example, of service, quality, operations, which will ultimately give you satisfied customers. So in non-for-profit, the customer is the highest value. In for-profit, money or sustainability or profitability is the highest value. This is Sick Kids. This is an old strategy by Sick Kids, but again, it's plotted or formulated around similar lines. My hospital, at some point, this was the strategy that we were working towards, right? There's a vision, mission, values, and then it's pretty much all the same. So don't get into the complexity of what strategies look like, but understand that it's really simple. Formulating a strategy is about those 4 or 5 steps that I talked about. And if you execute them one after the other on that high level, and then you cascade it down to the managers that should be monitoring the performance along the lines of strategy, then you're successful. But the problem is that there's more failures than there are successes. Why? Is it because strategies often are wrong? You think that strategies are often wrong, or something else does not happen? It's bad execution. 70% of the time, we have the right strategy, but we have no execution or poor execution, and that's the reason for failure. Very less often you have the wrong strategy. Like 20% of the time you might have the wrong strategy. But most of the time you have the right strategy, but you have failure in execution. That's why strategies fail. And this is Peter Drucker. We talked about Porter. Peter Drucker is, again, one of the big fathers and gurus of business and administration in modern time. And he says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I'm going to wrap up with how you guys explain that phrase. How does culture eat strategy for breakfast? What does that mean? Any shots? Should I start picking people? Khalas, we're wrapping up, so if you can just take a couple of jabs on how culture eats strategy for breakfast, we can wrap up. Ala. Yes.
I was going to say, Doctor, and what he means by that is that culture can, or usually intervenes heavily with the strategies that the businesses or the association usually employs. Culture.
Simplify your terminology. Don't complicate things. أعطينا مثال. Give us an example.
Let's say in here, for example, let's like 5 years ago, a company wants to maximize its assets and wants to put, let's say, like employ women drivers. So they can't do that in the culture with the laws.
No, that's not what it means at all. You're going to regulation, not culture. You're going to national policies and regulation. وقلنا إن the board of directors has to make sure that regulations are followed. So 5 years ago, you could not have had such a thing. So that's exactly what أو خلينا نقول that's not exactly what we mean by culture. يعني مش ثقافة مجتمع. نتكلم عن ثقافة منشأة, the culture of the organization. What does it mean that culture eats strategy for breakfast? Can anybody take? That's a good guess, but you didn't get it. Osama. Ala wanted to say something. Johara.
Yeah, the interference for the culture and the strategy.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does it work? What does that mean?
In whatever strategy we have, if the culture doesn't work, so it doesn't.
Johara.
I think she said it like it's the same thing, just like a set
I want
direction.
an example.
An example of
how culture eats strategy for breakfast.
how culture is.
I'll explain.
No, wait, I'll just give it a shot. It's like you already said it before, for your strategy to work out, you need to set a certain culture because they both, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So basically, عشان to wrap it up, so I decided as the CEO of my hospital that I want my hospital to be a friendly hospital. Tamam? I want my hospital to be a friendly hospital, patient friendly and family friendly. And you want, kids to be kids. We want to have a playful environment with the kids, the pediatrics. We want to have our patients experience a positive experience in our hospital. Tamam? And then, so that was my strategy. That was one of my strategic themes, that we are all about experience. And then I went on and I hired people that generally, مثلا, they weren't really coming from they were lesser salaries. And they mostly were people that I wasn't very careful in hiring them. They didn't really pay attention to that. They just wanted to do their job and leave. And then after I set the strategy, I never really talked to the managers and talk to your people that, I want everybody to be friendly. So what happens is when patients come in, so I said, that's my strategy, but I didn't cascade it. I didn't create a culture of friendliness. I just said it's a strategy. And so people walk in and there's these employees that are begrudged and they're unfriendly and they're not very happy with their salaries and they haven't really been trained appropriately. And so they deal with people rudely, in a rude way. So no matter what strategies I'm going to be talking about, who cares? If I'm not creating the culture of friendliness in my institution, my strategy it's dumps. It's nothing. It fails. I need to make sure that I hire the right people with the right values. I need to make sure that the message is cascaded down to the right managers and the right delivery, and that we give them training and that we help them so that we can realize that strategy. Otherwise, the culture will always prevail. You're going to get what you paid for. You're going to get what you worked on. It's not enough to come up with this fancy plan if you have no intention to make it work by making sure you get the right people on board and you get the right training and you create the right culture. Tamam? That's what that means.
That made it really, really clear. Thank you so much, Doctor.
All right, excellent. So I like this slide. Usually I put the slide at the end. I say that this is how the course was designed, is to look at strategically. We looked at everything that we could look at. Like we talked about healthcare systems. When we talk about culture, it's going to be covered in change management. And then when we talk about strategy, you're going to have a talk with Raed about leadership and management. I'm going to be talking about problem solving. Raed again is going to be talking about operational excellence and quality. I'm going to talk about patient experience. We won't be touching particularly on human resource management or finance or economics, but we will talk about innovation. And then hopefully we just touch on integrated healthcare delivery. I will give you some reading material that will cover some of the things that aren't covered in the course, but it was designed in such a way to look at the healthcare system from a strategic perspective in terms of those three disciplines that we talk about: operational excellence, quality delivery excellence, and patient experience. Okay. Have a good weekend. I hope today was tough, a little bit technical. My favorite topic in administration is strategy, so I'm passionate about it. And I do get into some details. I hope I made it simpler, not more difficult for you. Something to think about. I'm not sure if Dr. Omar has a quiz for you. I will leave you to it. Enjoy your weekends.
Yes, Doctor, thank you. We have a quiz actually.
right.
If no one has any question, I can take over from here, Doctor. Okay, so thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear.
Okay, so dear students, please stay on the call. If you check the chat now, you will find that I have sent a quiz key. Please use this quiz key and try to log in into a Moodle. You will find on this week the strategy quiz. It's there, it's waiting for you. Please try to solve it on your own. And remember, it's a timed quiz. So please pay attention to the timer at the bottom of the screen. Let me know, please, if you face any technical issue. I'll stay here in the call with you. Okay, so did it work? For those that asked, my email is now in the chat. If you face any issue, any technical, any registration issue, just come up, reach up to me, and we will solve it together. Don't worry, don't panic, please. Everything is solvable. So but reach out to me via an email and I'll take care of that.
The quiz is working, doctor.
Great, amazing. Then I can leave the call and wish you a good, relaxing weekend. See you inshallah next week.